Hi, I'm Abel.
Hi, I'm Harry.
And I'm George.
And together, we're Trail Worn Films, a YouTube channel where high quality filmmaking meets adventure motorcycling.
Welcome to the Real Riders Podcast. My name's Simon Josie, and this is a podcast about motorcycling and filmmaking. If this is your first time here, welcome and thanks for listening. As you heard, my guests for today's episode are Abel, Harry, and George, the names behind the Trail Worn Films YouTube channel. We'll get to my chat with them shortly. But first, I just want to mention again that tickets for the Adventure Motorcycle Film Festival have been selling well, and so don't delay if you're planning to attend the event and haven't got your tickets yet. The festival takes place on the 28th of February next year, and for all information, including ticket sales and how to submit your film to the festival, go to www.advmotofilmfest.com. You'll find the link in the show notes. If you didn't already know, the podcast has an account on Instagram where I post, amongst other things, trailers for each new episode. And if you want to know what I've been watching recently, I occasionally post about that on the podcast's Blue Sky account. Links for both the Instagram and Blue Sky accounts can be found in the show notes. Finally, if you want to help me keep the servers running, pumping out the Real Riders episodes, you can now support the podcast via Buy Me a Coffee donations. The link is in the show notes and also in my link tree, which you can find in my Instagram and Blue Sky account profiles. Righto, let's get to my talk with Abel, Harry, and George. Welcome to the podcast, Abel, Harry, and George. Thanks for joining me on the show today and being part of another first for the podcast. This is, in fact, the first time I've had three guests on the show simultaneously. How are you today? Maybe, Abel, start with you.
Yeah, all good. Thank you very much for having us. And I think we're all honoured that you've invited us on this. Yeah, thank you very much.
And Harry, you fighting fit this morning?
I'm always fighting fit. Not my average Saturday morning, but it's great to be here. And like Abel said, we appreciate it a lot. So super.
George?
Yeah, like the boys said, really grateful to be here. And excited to have a nice conversation about motorbikes.
Excellent. Okay, look, I'm going to start off with a sort of a chicken or egg type question. What came first, the motorcycling or the filmmaking? And maybe for you, George, what came first?
I'd say the filmmaking. Throughout my education, I've done media studies and film production. So I did GCSEs, I did media, and then I went on to college to do media studies. And then I got myself a degree at university for a film production degree. So definitely came first, and then motorbike sort of came on a bit after that, really.
And do you work in the industry, in the film or the television industry currently?
Not at the moment. I do a photography job, so that's about as far as I've gone with that, just because it's very competitive and you sort of need to live more near a city to be able to do that. So I haven't made that transition, and it's something I don't know if I really want to do as of right now.
Right. And the photography, did you do photography at school as well?
No, I'd just say they're quite similar. You know, if you do cinematography, it's fairly similar to just normal photography. So,
and when did you get into motorcycling? Like, when did you get your license?
I got my license when I was 19, so about 3-4 years ago now. I started off on like a little pit bike, 140cc. I rode that around a little bit, and then I jumped up to I did a cafe racer sort of build, and then I went and joined these boys who were riding motorbikes before me. And I got a XT600 Yamaha, and then that's when we did our first trip around France.
So nowadays, do you tend to favour the adventure style kind of bikes and riding to more road orientated riding?
Yeah, I'd definitely say they're more the adventure type. In the UK, we've got like Green Lanes Tech, so we just ride a lot of that basically when we can. I usually find it's quite hard to balance it with work life and, social life as well. So it's not as often as I'd like for it to be, but that's usually the type of riding I tend to be attracted towards.
Harry, what about you? Motorcycling first or filmmaking?
Yeah, no, absolute motorbikes. I've got next to zero experience with photography or filmmaking by any means. spent my entire life on two wheels and eventually transitioned to filmmaking and taking photos with these boys as the years went on. But no, I'm passionate about bikes through and through, and these guys have dragged me down the filmmaking track, which I love. I thoroughly enjoy it, and being a part of it with these guys is great. And it's all a big learning curve for me.
And the kind of riding, have you always been sort of an adventure rider, or have you sort of played in both teams?
Yeah, no, I had a moped when I was 16, which was, oh gosh, that was 10 years ago now. So that was sort of my first experience on the road. But from the ages of about 10 or 11, I was riding off-road, motocross bikes and trials bikes, etc. And as the years went on, the bikes got bigger and the adventures and the trips all got a little bit more serious, and sort of all stemmed from there, really. But no, adventure riding, I can't stand riding on the road personally. Certainly not in the UK. We haven't got the space for it, really. But adventure riding, both in the UK and abroad, is something we all love doing. Sadly, the road riding all sort of comes with it. You can't really get away from that, but we prefer mud under the wheels as opposed to tarmac.
And you guys, are you all in the south of England? Is that right?
Yeah, we're all from south of England, Dorset, all by the coast. So we've got a great network of off-roading from here. We're pretty central in terms of the UK, east, west, north. Endless amounts of fun to be had.
And Abel, tell me, motorcycling or filmmaking, which came first?
Yeah, definitely filmmaking. Similar path to George. We spent sort of our teenage years going out on adventures, not on bikes, but sort of exploring the local area, filming, taking photos, and that's sort of where it all started with the filmmaking, and then went into it through education. I did media studies at A level, and then went on to university, and it's just been a part of my life since then, really. And then the bikes came when I was about sort of 19, 20 years old. When I was at uni, I got my first 125, and then ever since then. I mean, I've always wanted to ride bikes, but I never really had the opportunity when I was younger. So the minute I sort of had free will to get on that path, we did, and then it just sort of naturally evolved. The filmmaking's evolved, and the riding bikes has evolved, and now it's just combined. Yeah, that's the main passion, really.
And what are you all riding currently? Like, what bikes have you got?
Well, we only really need to say one bike because we all have the same bike, which is Africa Twin XRV 750. Me and Harry are both on the RDO 7As, and George is on a RDO 4, so the slightly older model. But Harry was the first of the XRV, and then me and George followed suit once we had a go on it.
And what's the appeal of that bike?
I think we all have the same sort of idea with it, really, which is just it's simple to fix, it's iconic, and it's reliable, and it just generally is a really good sort of do everything bike. It's not the lightest bike, obviously, but it does make up for that in terms of like reliability, and it's an ideal bike for example, for the Norway trip. You wouldn't want a different bike to do that trip on. Just the mix of everything, and mainly just I think the reliability and an old Honda. It's just it's just so cool.
So on the Trail Worn Films channel, you've so far published 5 short films and a couple of YouTube shorts. What was your motivation to set up the channel, and maybe which one of you sort of instigated the setting up of the channel?
That was me. It was my YouTube channel for Sierra Media. I was uploading sort of like personal films, and I've had that YouTube channel for quite a long time. And there's been quite a lot of stuff that's been removed off of it, because I used to upload when we would sort of go out and do like urban exploring stuff. I had a lot of that stuff on there, but then I removed that because it wasn't a great thing to have online, I don't think, personally, for some of the stuff that we were doing. And then it became Sierra Media, and I was going to upload work from my business, which is creating content for local businesses. And then from there, I didn't actually upload much of that sort of commercial work because it was all optimized for Instagram, so it didn't really fit. And then about 2 and a bit years ago, me and Harry went on a sort of 6-week travel around Thailand, and we just sort of had a bit of fun filming with like a little RX. Is it RX 100? I think it is.
Yeah, RX 100.
Yeah, and we were just sort of messing around. Obviously, I'd been involved in film for quite a long time. Yeah, we just thought, we'll take this camera with us, film a bit of that, which is the first video you'll see on there. And that was sort of just uploaded and created as just sort of like a personal thing that we could just watch back and remember the trip. It was never to be like, right, we want to put this on YouTube so people can see it. And then the same with sort of the trip last year, which was sort of our first proper adventure bike trip around Europe. And we just created that, again, just sort of a personal thing. It wasn't like, right, we want to get this on YouTube. And then just the other videos that we've created since then, I thought, well, actually, this is sort of all going down a certain avenue in terms of like a niche. I thought I'd rebrand the YouTube channel as Trail Worn because some of them were getting a bit more views. And I thought, I'm quite interested in like branding, and yeah, it's just sort of like a little passion of mine on the side as well, like creating logos and that sort of thing. So I thought, yeah, let me brand this so it all sort of makes sense. And that's sort of how it's evolved into what it is now. And then obviously we've just upped the production quality of the videos, taking better gear with us, having a bit more of a plan. Yeah, that's sort of how it's evolved. So it's been through a sort of few different iterations, but none of them I was ever like, this is going to be a YouTube channel that loads of people are seeing. It's all just sort of personal stuff. And I think it still sort of is, to be honest. But yeah, that's how it's gotten to where it is today.
Yeah, I think that from everything I've seen and everyone I've talked to, I think playing the YouTube game is really hard work. And yeah, it's effectively a full-time job that doesn't really, unless you're really lucky, really lucky, it doesn't really pay like a full-time job. Yeah, even some quite big names from what I've seen, it's don't make a living out of it. Yeah. So George, you didn't go to Thailand, but you've been involved with all the other trips, haven't you?
Yeah, all of them apart from one other, which the boys went to the Pyrenees, and I was away that time. But yeah, I've been on the last two trips, which was the first Europe trip and then the recent Norway trip we just did.
Right. Okay, so when the three of you go away and decide to film a trip on the bikes, what filming equipment do you take for that trip? Maybe Harry, you can start.
I'm not sure I'm the right man for this question, but I do know what we take. It's quite obvious that Abel is obviously in charge of the camera equipment and looking after that as we go. As I don't think I'm trusted to take around thousands of pounds worth of camera equipment, but I know that Abel's cinema camera is the Sony FX30, which is really the heart of the modern videos, I'd say, in terms of the production quality. That didn't get used so much in Spain last year, did it, Abel?
A little bit, not as much as in Norway.
No, but this time in Sweden, we knew the scenery was going to be special, and we had to put that camera to good use, and obviously it paid off. But other than that, it's mostly shot with the DJI Mini Pro, the 3 originally that sadly got destroyed when we were in Sweden, so we had to pick up a new one en route. But that was all good and well. Otherwise, all footage from bike's point of view is all on our GoPros, which we all have one each. Again, George sadly lost his on the Sweden trip, or lost his mount anyway, so we lacked a bit of footage from his perspective. But I'm sure Abel can expand on the technical side of those things.
Well, just before he does that, I want to know what happened to the drone in Sweden. Come on, you can't. You got to tell me the details.
Well, we're not entirely sure. We think it was petrol damage. So Abel's got all his camera equipment in his tank bag, all really nicely and safely sort of laid out. And before we'd even left the UK, I think the excitement got to his head a little bit. And our first petrol station had a bit of a spill, a ginormous petrol spill, which ultimately went everywhere. And it went everywhere. He stank of fuel for days. And we didn't really think anything of it at the time. It didn't actually notice for 10 days? 10 days after into the trip, did we notice the lens on the drone is starting to fog up. At first, we just thought that must have been due to temperature change and moisture, whatever. And then very soon after that, the whole gimbal head just completely lost its way. And it wasn't until we had closer inspection of the waterproof bag that it was in that everything just totally stank of petrol. So we can only assume that the fuel, like I say, had its way with some kind of electrical component, um,
Yeah.
which was sad because from that we did miss drone footage of sort of the Nordkap entrance and right up in the north for a few days, which is a shame. But we were then able to get a new drone delivered to God, I've forgotten the name of the place now.
Trondheim.
Yeah, Trondheim. So we had to do a bit of a detour and change the plan slightly to get our hands on a new drone, which we successfully collected. I think all of us had slight doubts that we were never going to make it to this random hotel to pick up this new drone, but we did, and from then it was absolutely fine. But yeah, it was a sad day. It was a sad day when the drone went, but I believe it's now fixed and up and running again.
Uh-huh. Okay. And George, what didn't you tighten up on your GoPro mount properly?
I think from the Europe trip last year, I bought one of those chin mounts, and I think what happened is that because it was so hot where we were, I think the glue, I guess whatever it stuck by, just became a little bit loose, and I never realised. And then just one day, I was about, I'm going to get a cool shot in Norway, and then I go to feel if the thing was on, and I just realised it wasn't there, and I was like, brilliant. It's just fallen off somewhere. It's completely disappeared. So yeah, a bit annoying, but yeah.
Yeah, so if anybody wants a free chin mount, there is a Arai Tour X4 chin mount somewhere between Sweden and Nordkap, somewhere.
Okay, so when you don't lose things or spill petrol on them, are you all carrying a GoPro each or multiple GoPros? Like, what's your setup on each bike? Maybe Abel, starting with you.
Yeah, so obviously I'm carrying like the bulk of the filmmaking equipment, like Harry said, FX30, the drone, that's all in the tank bag. And then, we each just have a GoPro each. I think me and Harry both have the Hero 7 Black. And then, George, you've got the Hero...
I think 9, something like that, yeah.
Yeah, we've all got the ability, obviously, to have them on the helmet, but also to put them on the bike pointing back at us, which we think is a really cool perspective. So basically, those are our two mounts, and we all have the ability to do that, basically.
Yeah, actually, that's something I noticed because I've gone through all the films, and I noticed particularly with the traversing Spain on the Trans-Euro Trail film that you use the perspective of the camera mounted on the handlebars pointing back at the rider quite a lot. In fact, I only ever saw it maybe once a little bit in either A Lap of France or Ride to the Edge. I can't remember which of those two films, but it really made a big showing in the coast to coast traversing Spain on the Trans-Euro Trail film. So what's your thinking? Like, why'd you make that decision?
I think, to be completely honest, it's inspired by Adam Riemann, who makes mythology films. I think that's such an iconic shot, and it does give a really good perspective of speed, I think, as well, and the landscape behind you that you're sort of traversing through, especially in Spain, where you've got those sort of high mountains like either side of you. I think GoPro point of view shots are great, but you need to have variety. And I think that's how we were sort of running it in Spain was, I know Harry's getting that shot. Why would I get that shot as well? There's no point, unless obviously we're getting some technical terrain. But yeah, just to get a variety of shots. But I think with the GoPro, it's really only those two shots that you've really got an option with, personally, when it comes to riding. And I think, just more variety and showing off the landscape.
Yeah, like Abel said, I think the main reason we used it so much because there was only Abel and myself riding at the time. We knew we were going to be able to get the same shot, but in two different perspectives. So like Abel said, one of us would have it on our chin, while the other one would have it looking back at potentially the both of us. And you'll notice in the film that it often changes from one shot to the other at the same time. And I think in Sweden, I don't know why we didn't use it so much, but because there was three of us and it was all sort of a bit more spaced out, and the riding wasn't quite so as extreme as it was in Spain. So yeah, we just didn't utilize it so much. And we always want to try and get a variety and make the films look slightly different. So time is always of the essence on these trips, and we'd like to try and be as efficient as we can. We found with the front mounting camera that it's often too high or too low, or it's never quite right, and it's quite hard to get it looking absolutely perfect. I think Abel had a few issues with either, looking down at his chest or looking up to the sky. Whereas on the
Yeah.
chin, it's a fixed position and it's bang on every time, and you haven't got to do anything. It's just straight on the chin, press play, and off we go again. So yeah, I think it's efficiency as well as variety.
Yeah. I want to come back and talk about that whole topic of efficiency. But one thing that I've talked about with other guests on the podcast is sort of, I think audiences respond to watching people do things when it comes to action sports. So while it's nice to have the point of view shots that sort of give an indication of what the rider is seeing, actually watching the rider ride, I think, is often very compelling, whether it's that handlebar shot pointing back at the rider, or if you are using a point of view perspective, if you're following someone closely behind and you can see that person, doing the jump, going through the puddle, whatever. I think that's also works really well.
I think, especially with like motorcycling, when you are, or with like the chin perspective, the point of view perspective, you're missing all of that movement, and you're missing all of the movement basically, aren't you? You're missing all of those inputs to make the bike perform in a certain way, there's so much to it. And when you've got that shot looking back at you, you can see you sort of hanging off the bike. Whereas when you're through the point of view perspective, your head is just like a gimbal, isn't it? And especially with like modern cameras with built-in stabilization, you're almost just cutting all of that out, and it's just the camera's just moving through the landscape. So yeah, I think it just gives a much better perspective, especially on like technical sort of terrain, like in Spain, where you're really just trying to hang on to the bike.
Yeah, and the other thing I notice about those shots is the motion blur. Actually, from both the point of view perspective and even pointing back, you've got lovely motion blur. So, what have you got? Have you got ND filters for all the GoPros? Is that what you're doing?
Yeah, we've all got ND filters, not variable NDs, unfortunately, but I personally think it's like it's the best thing that you can do with GoPro footage, or when you're using a GoPro, is to shoot with ND filters. It gives you such a good perspective of speed, and it's just night and day. And day.
Yeah, for sure. Okay, just maybe one final question about the filming setup. So, do you take a tripod with you?
Yeah, we've got an Amazon Basics £15 tripod. So, not the sturdiest bit of kit, but ultimately we're all carrying sort of ultralight gear, trying to be as lightweight as possible. So our filmmaking setup needs to sort of reflect that, otherwise it's a bit pointless. So yeah, the Amazon Basics comes out regularly.
It's great. It's my favorite bit of equipment because it costs nothing, and it is ultimately the heart of all the footage. Without it, we'd have nothing. And I don't think we ever wanted to spend too much money on a nice tripod because they're always so big and so vulnerable on the back of the bikes. I mean, the first trip was in Spain that we took here, and we just thought it's a nice fancy tripod's just going to ultimately, it's only a matter of time until it gets crushed, destroyed, or drops off the bike and lost. So we'd rather just have the Amazon Basics, which has held its own now for thousands of miles, and it will continue to come until the day it decides to leave us. So
I think the thing is as well, with you can get modern, carbon tripods, but we just don't require that. We're not doing any movement. We literally just need something to hold the camera. So that's just the job for that.
I mean, you won't know it, but on our original Thailand video, we actually made a tripod out of found bamboo on the side of the road. I'm not sure it shows in the video online, but in the extended version, you can see the RX 100 props on a few bits of bamboo. So anything can work.
Yeah. Okay, so coming back to this question of efficiency, is there a tension between those two things, filming the film and riding the trip? And maybe, George, can you start with your perspective on that topic?
I wouldn't really say there's much of a tension. I think we managed to balance it quite well. I think that the paces that we ride and the distances that we cover, we're still able to do huge days and make huge progress, but still get some really good shots. I think the way that we go about it is we never want filming to take over the whole thing. We still want to experience it for ourselves, and we just want the camera to capture those little moments, I think, because at the end of the day, if you're spending your whole day filming, trying to get a certain shot, and you're getting upset about it or whatever, it just completely takes the fun out of it. And I think the whole thing of filmmaking is to just have a reflection of your experience. And then, it's just something to look back on. And I think that's how we all sort of think about the videos. It's not necessarily for loads of views and subscribers and all that. It's just for us to have some fun and just, have something to look back on. So I think it just balances so well when we do it. I don't think there's ever a time when we're like, oh, really, you want to get another shot? Or I don't think there's anything like that. I think we balance it really well. It just comes natural.
Yeah, I mean, that's kind of my observation because, I mean, you do some drive-by shots, but not so many drive-by shots or setups. Like, obviously, when you went up to Nordcup, you made a bit of a big deal about that, understandably, and obviously you probably set up the tripod there. But I think the other thing I notice sometimes is there's maybe a drone shot of two of you riding and not three of you. And is that because one of you's holding, hanging back and controlling the drone, particularly if the drone's moving as well?
Yeah, I think we found that, again, back to efficiency, it's obviously the drone has got the tracking capabilities, which we've found certainly on the when was it? Was it on the France trip that we were having troubles?
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, I think our first trip to France, when it was sort of the drone sort of first came into its own, we found that we were just not wasting, but using a lot of our time trying to get the drone to track us. And now, after experience, we've found that it just requires a certain layout of landscape and angles, etc., for that to work. So now unless we know it's going to work, we don't even consider it. So as opposed to that, now either Abel or George will just get off the bike, set up the drone, while the other two rerun it. And it halves the amount of time. You can almost guarantee the shot's going to be usable or look great almost first, if not second time. Whereas the tracking, Abel usually has to get off the bike, get the drone set up, get it in the air, get it all locked and targeted on us, pack all his gear away, get back on the bike, try and run it. Probably doesn't work. Have to stop, bring the drone down, reset. You might do this 2, 3, 4 times before you realize you've just wasted half an hour. You haven't even got a half usable, decent shot, and everybody's in a bad mood, and on we go. So from now we just say stuff it. The two of you, just because we're not fussed about who's in the shot necessarily. So
yeah. I think it's amazing when you do get those shots, and we had a couple of them in the Norway video where it is tracking us, and it comes out amazing. But you do lose so much creative freedom with that, and you have no you can sort of angle it. I mean, we're in the process of still learning how it works, but it's very much doing its own thing. Whereas, obviously when you're flying it, we've got full creative freedom. I can get the exact shot that I want. Also, George and Harry are both able to fly the drone if for some reason, I wanted to be in the shot. But I think at the end of the day, we're not trying to fool anyone. It's like, someone might be watching this and thinking, oh, hang on, there's 3 guys on this trip, but 2 of them in this shot. Well, it's like, obviously I'm flying the drone. We're not trying to fool you. Like, we're showing what we're doing. We're doing it efficiently. And also, in those landscapes, there's very specific shots that I want to get. And I think when we sort of best discovered it was actually last year in France, when we were doing our France-Spain trip. And George was like, oh yeah, let me get this shot of you and Harry, which is actually one of the opening shots of the video. And it's just such a nice shot that you would not be able to get with the tracking. There's one less motorbike in it, but it's just for that loss, it looks so much better.
Yeah, there's one shot, I think it's either in France or Spain, where the drone's basically flying on a straight line, and you guys are sort of coming around a curve from the left-hand side of the picture. And
that's the exact shot.
That's the one.
It's a lovely shot.
Yeah, George has done a lot of drone flying even before I've had a drone. So I'm sure he can talk more about his experience with drones. But that was the shot that he got, and he smashed it. And that's when I was like, well, screw the tracking. Let's just get some proper good shots. And
George, were you flying the drone at top speed, or were you in the sort of cinema mode, slightly slower speed?
I think I was in sports mode when I used it for that shot, just because I really wanted to try and match their speed.
Yeah.
Obviously, they outdid the drone quite easily, but I think it just, for me, a drone shot is best when you're not too high and you're not too close. You've just got that happy medium, and you can work around from there, and you can really fly and almost just be sort of connected to the bike. I think when you get these big establishing shots and you're a tiny little pea in the corner, I think it looks okay, but when you're a bit closer and you sort of move with them, different to a tracking shot. I think it just, you get a bit more involved with the shot, and it's a bit more atmospheric, and I really like that sort of style.
Yeah, I mean, the tracking is great, but you're so limited. I'm speaking for Abel here, but you're limited on the editing side of it. You'll notice a lot of the drone shots where they're flown by usually one of these boys, exactly like that shot. You'll see the scenery peel off after or beforehand, whatever. Whereas the tracking is so limited. It just cuts straight onto you 3 or 2 riding, and then that's sort of the end of the shots. And unless the scenery is really special, I just don't think they're all that great. And quite frankly, they can't keep up with us. So
Okay.
Yeah.
Right. Okay. So that actually leads kind of nicely into the next question, which is linked. Well, it's actually follow up from the previous question, because Abel, I assume you're doing the editing.
Yep.
How is this approach to filming the trip? How does that suit you when it comes to editing the film? Do you have sufficient coverage, variety of shots to be able to put together a film that's worth watching?
Yeah, there's always enough footage. There's never really a problem. The amount of footage usually suits the sort of film that we're making, and it all sort of comes together in the edit. And I never really have a preconceived idea of how long any specific video will be, or the exact sort of style of it. So the process is sort of, we're just getting out there, enjoying the trip, filming things that we think are going to look good, trying loads of different stuff, balancing getting those big days in and filming, which, like George said, I think we've got a really good setup with that. And then I just sort of put it all together in the edit, and it sort of becomes what it is sort of meant to be. So as you can probably see from the Norway video, that's a much shorter video compared to, say, for example, the Spain video. But I think that's sort of how it was always meant to be. The Spain video, there's a lot more point of view footage because of the type of riding that we're doing. And then in the Norway video, there's much more still footage, drone shots, more cinematic stuff. The Norway-Sweden video is quite a bit shorter, but that's not because we didn't have enough content. Well, you've got plenty of GoPro footage to put in there, but a lot of the scenery in Sweden is so similar. So just riding through Sweden, if I was to include GoPro shots just to push it up to a half an hour video, I don't know why I would sort of be interested in doing that anyway. Obviously, I guess for monetization, but that's not something that we're interested or involved in. Then you could do that, but it doesn't fit the sort of video that it doesn't suit the landscape, to be completely honest. In Sweden, you've just got, it's all gravel tracks, all very similar, and that's where it was much nicer to use the FX30 and the drone to show the landscape off. But I think the edit pulls it all together, and how we've shot the footage it all just sort of, it works how it's meant to work. And I never really have a preconceived idea it's going to be this long, or this long. So it all comes together in the edit, and we just shoot what we want to shoot when we're on the trip.
Have you guys been to any of these places on motorcycles before? Either up north in Norway, Sweden, or down in France and Spain?
No. We've done trips in 4-wheeled vehicles to Europe and things, but no, all these trips are a first for motorbiking, which is great.
Yeah.
Exploring these new places sort of for the first time all together on 2 wheels is really a huge part of it. And I know certainly Abel and I on a similar mindset is we don't really like going back to the same place twice. So we kind of make a point of going somewhere and doing it properly the first time and coming up with the next sort of adventure. So we make the most of it while we're there.
So would it be fair to say that you probably don't do a lot of, should we say, in terms of the filmmaking, pre-planning beforehand, and really when it comes to making the film, you try to sort of represent the vibe of the film, the vibe of the trip in the film, and that might be half an hour, as you say, for one film, or only 7-8 minutes for another film. Is that right?
I wouldn't say Abel necessarily goes out of his way trying to get footage to match his needs. I think both Abel and George have got an incredible skill of being able to sort of visualize these films before they even come onto the editing screen. So I think we kind of just make a conscious effort to get quality over quantity in terms of footage, and it sort of all starts playing together as we go. We start getting a sort of idea of the sort of footage that we've got and what we're going to get. I'm sure by the time Abel gets home and starts sitting behind his computer, I know for a fact he's already got it in his mind as to what the movie is going to look like. But no, I wouldn't say we go out with a direct plan as to what we're going to shoot, and we just see what happens. You never know what's going to happen. You might lose your drone and lose all your cinematic aerial shots, and before you know it, you can have a completely different movie altogether. So,
yeah, true.
And there's no plan, there's no written plan, never. We pack up the camera gear, we go and do the adventure that we want to do. And like George said, the riding and the adventure is by far the most important thing of these trips, and the filming and the photography side just comes along with it, mostly for these two and their passion for it. And I think they just come hand in hand really well, and sort of always just bouncing off each other. So no, it's we get what we get, then we've always...
Yeah, that's it.
And tell me, on the trip itself, what's sort of the division of labour between the three of you when it comes to making decisions about what are you going to film? Is it something that you do collectively, or is one of you a dictator?
I think it's super collective. Certainly these two have got a real eye for what we think is going to be a good shot. I'd like to think that over the years I've started gathering a bit of an idea as to what's going to look nice. And I personally get a huge sense of satisfaction out of sort of visualizing something and shooting it and it making Abel's harsh cuts to the movie. But no, ultimately, if one of us thinks it's going to be a crap shot, we're not afraid to say it. We just say no, it's not worth it. And I say I'm probably a bit more like that because I'm sort of Mr. Bike Man that likes to get on. But like in Sweden, I knew we were going to see potentially more beautiful scenery, and I knew what was to come. And we don't like to waste time getting sort of the same shots over and over. So no, all three of us are more than happy to tell each other to stuff it and move on and just get a better one that's later on down the line. But no, I wouldn't say there's any dictatorship. I think we're all pretty similar minded, and we've got a pretty strong rule when we're on these trips to only get a certain amount of footage per day, and that seems to be working quite well. You could have one day with no scenery and the next day full of scenery, but we try to stick with trying to get one or two good drone shots a day or one or two good cinema camera shots a day. And when you're on 2-3 week long trip, there's more than enough cinematography there to put something together. So we're quite strict in that respect, but otherwise we get down to business and try to keep quality over quantity, like I say.
Yeah, I think just expanding on that. Yeah, it's just definitely a collective effort. Like, obviously, I'm carrying the camera, so a lot of the time I'm setting it up and pressing record, but that's only one part of it. So we're all obviously on communicating, and we can discuss quickly. Right? Do you think that looks good? Or so yeah, we're all equally coming up with ideas for shots and executing it together as a team. Even so, like I'll give the tripod to Harry, tell George to go scout up ahead, set the camera up, and that's how we're able to do it efficiently. Still enjoy the riding rather than just like, it's not just like, right, that's a shot, you just do it there, we'll go do it. Do you know what I mean? It's a collective effort for sure in terms of decision and execution.
Okay, like I'm not trying to generate any drama now, but I am going to ask, how do you choose the soundtrack music?
Yeah, so it's down to me really in the edit. Obviously, when we're talking about these films, we've only really got a small amount of films to talk about. There's not a whole bank of films saying this one. But I'll talk about like the main ones. So obviously, Spain. I made the decision before, even when we were on the ferry, me and Harry were listening to music. Obviously, we had quite a bit of time. I was like, this song's definitely going to be in it. This is amazing. I can already picture this. And then, I'm really into my music. So I'm not bothered about copyright at all for the Spain video. I want to have all these songs which I want in it. And that sort of was a big part of the Spain video. And I think a lot of people like that, but it has caused problems with the copyright of the video. We don't mind if it's not able to be monetized. It makes no difference to us. I mean, at that point, we had probably 100 subscribers when I uploaded the Spain video. That was my mindset. I'm not bothered as long as people can see it. But that actually changed when the video was like completely removed off of YouTube because of a song, and I had to remove a segment of the music, just using like the YouTube Create Studio thing. And then since then, my mindset sort of changed on it, and I was like, well, I mean, we actually had a comment about this. I replied to a guy yesterday. He liked the fact that we're using copyright stuff, but it's not really viable going forward because we can't spend all this time creating these videos and then they're just removed off the internet. So I have to make different choices, and that's affected the choices that were made in the Norway and Sweden video. So I'm using non-copyright music, and that means that people are able to watch the video. It's not being taken down, but obviously you are then limited by the amount of certain types of music that you can use, and that affects the video. But I think that's just the sort of price you have to pay, and just have to spend a bit more time searching and investing your time into music, rather than sort of I was just being like, oh, I love this song, that works perfectly, let's have that, let's have this, let's have that. But yeah, that's got to obviously change.
Yeah, okay. So a couple of things on that. I mean, I think that's maybe one of the attractions of Instagram at the moment, is that you can use legally use copyrighted music for, is it like 90 seconds or something, from their own library, which is pretty enticing, I think.
Definitely.
And it would be nice if you could do something similar on YouTube. The second thing I had to ask, though, for the film A Lap of France, which is just over 4.5 minutes long, that's the one that you use Groove Armada's super styling in, I think, isn't it?
Yeah.
Well, yeah.
I have to ask, did you pick that music before you started editing, or did you edit the film, or did the music get added in later? I'm pretty sure I know what the right answer is.
Yeah, it was the song was definitely around before the video, and in terms of idea, I think we were probably listening to it on the trip, to be honest.
Yeah,
in the Cardos. So yeah, the song came first,
because it drops in about, I don't know, is it 30 seconds or a minute into the film? And it's just like, okay, I can see, yes, I can see why you've chosen this piece of music. Yeah.
Yeah, I think it just matches. I think it matches the sort of the rhythm of the trip, and sort of how we were feeling on the trip. I think that's what the music in all the film sort of does, is matches like the energy. Yeah, it was a very high energy trip. I mean, they all are, but yeah.
Yeah. And George, you're happy with all the music choices? You don't have any complaints?
No, not at all. No, I think they sound good. I think they suit the videos really well, to be honest.
Yeah.
I wouldn't say there's anything I'd really change.
No, I think Abel can pride himself on always having a good music choice, and I've never even considered it being. No, I think we have certainly on the Spain video. I think there was a few songs that we sort of chatted about and things, but no, but I don't make any complaints. I think the hours and labour Abel puts into the editing, he has every right to choose what the soundtrack is. That's for sure.
Yeah.
Okay, what have been the most important lessons you've learned to date, and what changes maybe you're going to implement for the next, if any, for the next trip?
I think the main thing that we've all discussed and we all agree on is just keep doing what we're doing, keeping it authentic, and not changing the way that we enjoy these trips to create content in a different style. We want to keep doing it the way we want to do it, and that's in terms of the filmmaking and in terms of the trip. So I think it's just keeping doing what we're doing, and not sort of catching that, like, oh, we're getting X amount of views on this video, so we're going to change the way we do things to cater for our audience, because that was never our intention. So I think that's what we've got going for us is sort of authenticity and doing it the way we want to do it. So I think in answer to that is I wouldn't change anything the way we're doing it, basically. For our traveling trips, I would say there's other videos that we want to make that are slightly different, more pre-planned, still down the same avenue and same style. But yeah, for the trips and for the videos that come with them, just keep doing what we're doing because it works, we love it, and we're not trying to cater for anyone else. We just want to do it how we want to do it.
Exactly.
I think to add to that as well, we have been to other places where we've come across other motorcyclists, and there's been a few times where we've seen them go over and over and over and over and over again to get one shot, and you can see them actually getting annoyed about it, and potentially even get annoyed at whoever else they're with because they can't get that shot. And we all see it, and we're just like, oh, that is boring. Like, just have a bit of fun. Like, you're on holiday. Like, at the end of the day, you're having a trip and you're on holiday. Like, loosen up a bit and just maybe, that shot's not meant to be. If you can't get it, move on to something else. Don't ruin the trip or your day because you didn't get the perfect shot or something. So I think we all sort of agree on that side of it as well, that we don't want to be so focused on one thing. We want to have fun still. It's a holiday. It's a trip. if you don't get the shot, you don't get the shot. There's always tomorrow or the next week or however long you're away for. And also post-production, you can change everything. So, you want to make it seem a bit more smooth or whatever, that's up to the editing. So, yeah, I think that's what I'd say on that part as well.
Yeah, exactly. I think as a whole, I think we're sort of learning small lessons almost every day, whether that's filming related or bike related, but we sort of progress and work on from that. But no, there's always lessons to be learned when you're out there adventuring, and we take it as it comes and make as we do. But like George says, we don't get caught up on shots. I mean, if it's not meant to be, it's not meant to be. And most of the time, we go for a shot, we get it first time, it looks great, and it's in the video, and on to the next one. So yeah.
One thing I notice is that you make no effort really to talk on screen or capture dialogue. I think maybe in the Spain trip, there's a little bit of spill into the microphone when one of you got a bit excited or nearly came off or something. But that's actually quite a feature of your films, is that you don't try and capture dialogue. Now, does that come down to the authenticity possibly as well, that you don't want to simulate those conversations? If you capture them, fine, but you're not going after them. You're not trying to generate them in an artificial way.
No, yeah, he's absolutely right. It's all to do with, like Abel said, being authentic. If there's a bit of back sound, raw sound on the GoPros that we think suited to the video at the time, or is relevant, then absolutely makes the cut. But so many of these video filmmakers are just guys sat behind a GoPro, just chatting what we think is just waffle, and we really pride ourselves on the sort of cinematography side of things, and we know what each other sound like. We ultimately made these videos for us, our friends, our families to watch, and I think we're all in agreement that we're gonna stick by that. And for the people that really matter in terms of feedback to us, they all say the same thing. They love that it's not like every other video, and that it stands out because of that. So absolutely, I will stand by my guns and refuse to speak to the camera for the sake of speaking to the camera, because that's what so many people do. And as it says in the description, we like to make the videography do the talking. We don't need to speak about it. Just sit down and watch the movie. And if you want to hear us speaking, then go and listen to one of the other thousands of motorbike adventurers that are chatting to the camera for the sake of chatting. So no, it all comes down to the being authentic, I think. Yeah.
What are your thoughts on incorporating into your films maps or other visual indicators which sort of identify trip objectives or progress towards trip objectives?
I think I made a comment. So I wasn't on the trip for the coast to coast one, but I think after watching it, I did mention to Abel just a suggestion that, because when you have a longer segment, a longer video, it could be, it's just an idea. You could have like a map as to where you were, where you started, just to sort of break up the video a little bit, or even just to show where you are. I think we have sort of spoken about it a little bit, but we didn't really need to do that in the Norway trip. I think it really depends on the type of video that you're filming. I don't know, but if you would agree.
No, I mean, sorry, just about it. I don't think any of these films are made to be informative. We're not here trying to teach people about the Trans-Euro Trail or tracks or trails or where this section is and that. That's just not what we do. And I don't think any one of us particularly want to go out of our way and effort to try and inform people about these tracks. If they're interested, they want to do it, then book a ferry and go and do it yourself. We're going to show you what the scenery is like, and if you like, if you think you might like it, then go and experience it for yourself. And you'll notice in a lot of the comments, I try to reply to people about certain sections where this and that were, but what? So what? It's a red dot on a map. If you want to experience it, then go and experience it. If you want to know where a particular section is, then we can tell you where that is. But ultimately, I think we're really trying to keep things cinematic and film based rather than informative. But I mean, I'm sure Abel can expand and agree with me on that.
Yeah, I think that last point you made about it being cinematic, that's really what it comes down to. I've definitely explored that idea, and I have looked into different ways of doing that, sort of to give a scale of what we're doing. For example, like the Norway, it would be great to show how far we've actually ridden, because it's a serious journey, and even the same with Spain, going so far off road, it would be great. But I haven't found a way to do that cinematically yet, and in a pleasing way. Like Harry said, it's not a documentary, but yeah, it's a cinematic film at the end of the day. And if I was just to chuck a red line on Google Maps and throw that into the video, that would completely ruin the video, in my opinion. But I think if there's a cinematic way of doing it, that is something I'm definitely looking to explore more in the future. I definitely think it would work, but it's got to be done properly. And I think that probably will come down to sort of some form of visual effects and doing it differently to how other people are doing it. There's certain apps which you can get which show a little car driving along Google Maps. Like, it just looks terrible, in my opinion.
Yeah, I agree. You got it was such a long distance. We're talking potentially 10,000 kilometers plus. You're looking at such a large scale map. The only one way of showing it would be a line or a route. Which on the France trip, on the lap of France, our first trip, I actually did track the whole route by GPS, so that if we wanted to, we could expand that into a full route. But as these boys learned, at the end of every day, I was getting so frustrated with trying to document all these different routes. I mean, I actually hated it, so I haven't done it since. So yeah, I think over such a long distance, it'd be difficult to implement that. If they were shorter routes, I know for things like Strava and short distance running, and these athletes that are doing these crazy like Tour de Mont Blanc, you can get these really cinematic 3D sort of blown up explosions of you're essentially part of the footage where you go all up through the mountains and it's all 3D and it looks really cool. And I think with something like that, you could definitely implement it in a cinematic way. But like Abel says, just slapping a red line on a map in the middle of one of these movies, I think would be disgraceful.
Yeah.
Tell us what you really think.
So I might have to say something if he tries to do that.
Yeah.
Hopefully the next topic is something that maybe you will all agree on, and that is, what's the next destination?
Yeah.
Oh well, we've actually just booked it as of a couple of days ago. I think George is still waiting to hear back from work and dates, but we always do an Easter trip. This Easter just gone was of course the Spain trip, the coast to coast, which is a slightly shorter period of time that we get. So we're going back to Spain. Ferry's booked for the 27th of March, I believe, and 2 weeks riding in the Picos as opposed to the Pyrenees. So we'll be heading west as opposed to east. 2 weeks of, again, hopefully some more hardcore trail riding. So very exciting.
And will that be on the Tet again?
Yeah, all on the Tet. It's exactly the same. So on the coast to coast traversing Spain was completely Tet. We didn't come off the Tet for pretty much for 2 weeks, and we will fully intend to do something very similar for the Picos. So it's all a little bit of the unknown, but we will go the same setup as we always do, and hopefully George can join us for the same dates. I'm sure he can, and there's a few bits of planning to do in terms of routes and things, but otherwise we normally just load the bikes up, hop on the ferry and see what happens.
Okay, so we're on the home straight now. With regards to your own filmmaking, who have you taken inspiration from, or who would you recommend others to watch? And maybe start with you, George, and then Harry, and then Abel finish.
So I'd say really, but I didn't really used to watch any sort of adventure bike riders up until I did the first trip, the lap around France. When we were on the ferry, Abel and Harry were sat opposite me, and I could see that they were on Harry's iPad watching something. And I was like, they were getting like really gassed up about a video they were watching. I was like, oh, what are you boys watching? And they're like, oh, just watching the best motorcycle guy that does videos. And I was like, oh, who's that? Adam Reamer. So I think it's all sort of stemmed from Adam's sort of style of videos, I think, because he came from a film and photography background. I think he has a really good format for videos. I think, especially after now watching him for a while, he has a really good format for videos and he sticks to that and it works really well for him. So I think that's sort of the only person I've ever really watched. I mean, you see stuff on Instagram, but I'm not really too interested in watching videos on people talking about the gear that they use, and I just find it a bit boring. I just rather watch people ride. And like, there's a sort of time when Adam did a series on like in Thailand, and that was my favorite one he's done because it's just pure riding, and he's such a good rider. That's what I like to watch, and he just happens to be the most popular guy doing it. So I think that's why I'm more attracted to him.
Yeah, and I think we're all going to have a very similar answer for this question, to be honest. But it all sort of started 2 years ago. When Abel and I were riding around Thailand on these little Honda Wave 125s covering thousands of kilometers for weeks up in the north of Thailand through the jungle on these little mopeds. And whenever we'd have Wi-Fi or signal, we'd download these videos of Adam doing all this crazy stuff, which sort of pushed and drove us to carry on with that adventure. And from then it all sort of stemmed back to coming back to the UK. And like Abel said, I was the first to buy the same similar bike. And it just went on from there, really. And since we've kind of been sort of these Adam Riemann fans that have, watched all his videos, and he's been a huge aspiration to everything that we've done. And we actually had the pleasure of meeting him this year at the ABL festival here in the UK. And, sat down, had a beer with him and a good chat about what we're doing and everything. And I think that's really given us all a good push and drive to carry on doing what we're doing and see where things take us. But yeah, we love it. We're boys.
Yeah,
that's it. That's it. Like Harry said, we've all got a similar answer in terms of inspiration. But yeah, I think for me, in terms of cinematic inspirations as well, I'm just a real big fan of cinema and cinematic stuff. I think there's a death of cinematic films with social media and YouTube, and a lot of it is just, like Harry said, George said, just talking to the camera, and there's no real, in my opinion, skill in it. Obviously, I respect what people do, and I'm not trying to put anyone down, but all of the stuff that I'm interested in and that I find really inspiring is sort of combining the skills of filmmaking with adventure, and there's a few YouTube channels. Obviously, Adam is one of them. I personally really like Sander Budnick. He's a Canadian YouTuber who does a lot of sort of survival challenges, but it's all very cinematic. If you've not seen him, you should go watch it. It's not just waffling on. It's incredible footage of the landscape, and I think that's really inspiring. So yeah, those are my two sort of main inspirations, I'd say.
Cool. Okay, famous last question. And Harry, you're going to go first, then Abel, and then we're going to finish with George. And you're going to have to try and give me your own answers and not copy each other. But does the filming enhance or diminish the pleasure of a motorcycle ride for you?
No, I think it totally enhances it. I mean, me personally could definitely do these trips without it, but I personally relive those trips almost every day, going back and watching those videos. Whenever I have a spare moment of time, I'll sit down and I'll watch one of our trips and reminisce on those great adventures. So from here on out, I couldn't personally imagine doing these trips without the ability to record and film and turn it into a memory that we can have forever. So no, for me, it totally enhances it and has now become such a big part of it that we don't really even consider it. It's just part of these adventures. And as time goes on, we get better and more efficient. And yeah, it's just a huge part of it that I have every intention of keeping and growing. So yeah.
Abel?
Yeah, I think, not trying to copy Harry's answer, but what we get afterwards, the reward we get afterwards, being able to relive a trip is just so worth the sort of tiny minor inconvenience of having to stop it and film, which is something that I love doing anyway, because I know when getting a great shot, I'm like, that enhances that moment specifically for me then during the trip, but also it just it enhances the trip once it's finished, once it's over, because these trips are only 2 or 3 weeks, but yeah, that memory and that experience is just enhanced afterwards.
George?
Yeah, a bit of a tricky question to answer differently, but yeah, I completely agree with these boys. I mean, it just definitely enhances it. I think for me as well, I love the idea of, I've got quite a bad memory, so it's always good to look back at these videos and I see, like when we're riding along, there's a really cool landscape. I'm like, oh yeah, let's film that, because I want to remember that. I want to look back on that in however many years' time, going, yeah, I did that when I was younger. That's really cool. And then I can, potentially show people. Or for me, I actually find them quite special. I can't see why we wouldn't film or like level up anymore from going forward, because I just think they mean so much to all of us, and I think they really represent how passionate we are. And I think as time goes on, the videos will just get better and better. Who knows how that'll be? We don't really plan for it. We just let it happen, basically. So I do think the videos will get better and better. We might invest in better skills with drones or cameras or whatever you have, but it definitely enhances the trip, that's for sure.
Thanks so much for being my guest for this episode, Abel, Harry and George. Please tell listeners where they can find and follow your work online.
Thanks so much, Simon, for having us. I think we've all really enjoyed it. But yeah, if you want to head over to our YouTube channel, it's just Trail Worn Films, and on Instagram it's just Trail Worn UK. So yeah, head on over, and if anyone's got any questions, feel free to drop us a message or Instagram or comment on one of the YouTube videos, and we'll be happy to help. But yeah, again, thanks so much for having us on. It's been an honour.
Great. Look, thanks again for being here today. Good luck with that trip to the Picos. Take care and ride safe.
Brilliant. Thank you very much, Simon.
Thank you.
Yeah, thanks, Simon.